Hello and welcome. I am Dr. Lara, a clinical pharmacist specializing in functional medicine, as well as a certified yoga teacher and Reiki master. I run a truly integrative health coaching practice, encompassing functional medicine lab testing, yoga and meditation, and a sprinkling of Reiki energy medicine. Join me here on Light Body Radio to break through your health plateau and come into alignment with your natural vitality. Hello and welcome to another episode of Light Body Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Lara, and today I have with me Dr.KC Kent, PhD. She is the founder and chief alchemist of Apothecary of Light, Health and Healing. A recovering corporate ladder climber, Casey blends her Western biomedical wisdom with her Eastern energy experiences to support wellness for the whole being, body, mind, soul, and spirit. After medical trauma in 2017 nearly extinguished her light, Casey created Spark Healing Summit as a place for practitioners to show up as their whole selves, to embrace the light and shadow of their collective and individual humanity. Thank you, Casey. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So I want to start with you introducing yourself to us.
Okay.
Tell us your story.
Yeah, my name is Casey Kent, as you said before. And I joke that my story starts at birth, but obviously we don't have that kind of time, so we won't start there. But I began understanding a little bit more about what I name Eastern practices when I was a graduate school at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. And I was studying biomedical research, specifically in genetics and cardiovascular genetics, and had a really hard time in that sector. I didn't really know when getting into grad school how difficult the emotional part was going to be. I expected it was going to be a challenge, like mentally and intellectually. And so I was seeking outside of the lab and outside of the academic environment for finding other tools. And I had become a yoga exchange person, so that I worked the front desk in order to receive yoga classes and be part of that community. And I started to be connected with a couple of yoga teachers who did more metaphysical type work in their classes. And I was intrigued. And so that started me on my journey to recognize that there was more to the whole story of healing beyond what was happening in the four walls of the hospital, where I was getting a prestigious education. And so that's where I was first introduced to energy healing and meditation, Reiki, that kind of thing. And so that I started to become aware that those things were really integrated. It's taken me a long time, that was 10 years ago, to be able to find a space where I feel pretty centered in understanding how, in my mind, all the paths lead up the mountain, and that it is this integration of them, and rather than one over the other. And in my life, I've had that pendulum swing back and forth, like, well, it's science, that's how that describes our wellness, or like, well, I kind of want to divorce myself from the scientific community, and really, if we just use our minds and words to create our own reality, then we can be healthy. And I have sort of come to the space of the integration of those two pieces of me.
Mm-hmm. And well, I think it needs to be repeated. I say this all the time, but we're energetic beings having a physical human experience.
Exactly, I love that.
And so I believe that we incarnated in these lives to take that journey of reconciliation between the physical and the energetic. And so we can have a medical cure with whatever we're struggling with on the physical level, but healing is a totally different dynamic, and you might not get rid of your dis-ease or imbalance, but you can still call and claim to be healed. And can you talk a little bit about that, and especially maybe in light of if that's okay, with your near-death experience that you experienced?
Absolutely. So what really spurred me onto this path of my business, Apothecary of Light, was a near-death experience. And I had bilateral pulmonary emboli. And for your audience that is medically trained, they probably know this. But for those that aren't, I had blood clots that traveled from somewhere else in my body and were in my lungs and occluded my breathing pathways, and I passed out. And really that passing out was loss of oxygen to the point of I should have died. And I remember in the process of it happening to me, the day started out really beautifully, and I chanted to Lakshmi, came downstairs to feed my cat, and then all of a sudden I felt like if I was an appliance who had electricity plugged in, that it had just been removed, and I went to and as that, I'm sure no one could see what I just did, but
that's a great sound effect, though.
Exactly. And as I was dying through this process, I thought in myself, oh, I didn't think I was done yet. So there was some recognition to me that this wasn't just a pass out experience that I'm going to get over. There was a connection to this mystery beyond too, of like, wait, hey, energy out there, do I get to stay in this body and do this work? And I know that I was being called to higher purpose, and I had been a corporate ladder climber, like you mentioned, and that I had been dabbling in the energy field as a career, and so that's sort of what got me on the path. But so I went to the hospital, right? That I didn't go to a healer to say, can you please help me remove these blood clots from my lungs?
Right.
However, when I did go to the hospital, and I didn't know how bad it was at all until I was in a CAT scan, and like they asked me to hold my breath, and I was like, I can't. I literally can't. And so I was really surprised. And then my medical knowledge became a challenge, actually, because I was like, oh, there's a reason that physicians speak in Latin is to obscure some of the information. And I understood a lot of what was going on. And when they said that my RV was bigger than LV, that's my right ventricle of my heart is bigger than my left ventricle of my heart, and I had a panic attack. You know, it was like, you're kidding me. That's
you're like, shit, that's bad.
That's not normal. I studied the heart for graduate studies.
Really not good.
This is not at all good. But I activated my team. So I do have people on this earth who are energetic healers. Those who are, everyone's an energetic being. I believe that too. But who have really access to their healing gifts. And so I reached out to them and was like, okay, well, this really bad thing happened. Can you help me? Can you help the process? And I was basically, to the medical community that saw me in the hospital, they could not believe, number one, that I was still alive, and number two, that I healed so quickly, or that I was able to pass all my clots in a way that I was doing well. And some of that had to do with denial of me just being like, I'm totally fine. But yes, that combination. I went and I had catheter-directed thrombolysis. So I had a medical procedure in which chemicals were put in my body to be able to dissolve clots. And I was activating to my team, my healers, and they were working on me and checking in and helping the Western medicine work better, faster.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I'm passionate about too, and that's why I'm so excited to have you having this conversation with me, is that I feel like this is really the missing link with, Western medicine is amazing. It does amazing things. Yes. It's not perfect. No. And there's a lot of things it's not good at all. But in order for us to thrive and be humans, which means we're constantly bombarded by toxins, other people's energies, all of these things. Like, we have to still maintain some level of detoxification pathways. Like, our body still has to function, and that happens through chemistry and physics and biology, of course. But then also too, like, like you just said, you called it denial, but some would actually call it, like a positive manifestation of your own healing path, of saying, I am well, I am whole, I can transcend this.
Yes.
I can heal past this.
Yes.
And so I'm so excited for other practitioners like you, like me, to really be able to bring this true integration to patients, people, whatever you want to call them, all people, and help them awaken to that. Because I feel like that's something that we're trained out of as consumers of healthcare.
Yes.
And we're trained to give our power away to someone else.
Yes, absolutely.
To make decisions for us, to tell us what's best for us. And so, I'm just excited. And I think that's also what you're doing with Spark, is you're bringing that other level of that other dimension into it.
Absolutely.
And giving people more and more tools so that they can go to the doctor, they can do their lab work, they can work on whatever chronic conditions they have or acute conditions.
Right.
But then they need more. We all need more support. And our doctors can't do it all. Like, that's an unreasonable expectation to put on them as well. So,
and it's what's really becoming enlightened to me. It's funny that I use the word enlightened, because learning how trauma is really stored in the body, and that it really is there, and that in my life, I can speak from my experience that there's a lot of it that I closed the door on. And I'm laughing about enlightened because I'm calling that shadow work. So I've been working with people recently to uncover those held traumas in the body and how to transmute them. Perhaps I've heard some people say that you can't actually change that feeling in your body, but you can change the relationship that you have with it. And so that's part of the idea of, your thoughts and your words create your reality too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I've been taking a course over the past year in neuro-linguistic programming. So truly learning that the words, our belief system, is what creates our reality. And like we were talking about in my medical trauma, if I just said I'm healed, there's nothing wrong with me, that was my reality at the moment. That wasn't the always reality, because healing is a journey. It's one layer. And that does get back to the looking at both light and shadow are the dance of love. This Rumi quote that I adore, and it's actually the theme of this year's Spark Healing Summit, so that we are invited to look both at our individual shadow, and that shadow being the often neglected parts of ourself, and how that fits into a community too. As a human race, a human species, can we look at what our deepest shadow is? And in my mind, that's white supremacy culture, that's oppression, and how do we heal as a unit? And from what I have experienced, that's always in community. And yes, we have to do our own work, and we have to do that work with others and with community in order to raise the collective.
Yes. And it takes a willingness and a level of acceptance. And what I feel and see, I think that is absent in what I'll just call like mainstream discussions about what you just brought up, is the lack of compassion. And there's such a strong, and I know it's coming from pain and hurt and trauma, but it's ironic that I feel like there needs to be, like, if we could approach it without the judgment.
Exactly.
Could we talk about it in a objective way and acknowledge each person, culture, history's role without the blame, the name calling, the almost like, I want to make you feel bad.
Yes.
Because that's not healing or helpful.
No.
But I agree with you. Yes. Like they're, and I do feel like we're going through it, and it's, we're definitely having growing pains.
Yes.
But I think the world in general is, because it's not just the United States.
It isn't. Well, and I think that this is part of the key, is to have sacred spaces where you can have brave conversations. And so I set some parameters around my spaces that I create. And for me, that's the 4 C's, or my pillars. So courage, compassion, curiosity, and community. And so if we lead and have conversations in the way that those 4 things are equally important, I think that creates a container where we might be able to look at our own experiences. So we've all had trauma. I've heard it said that the one unifying thing that each human has is trauma. And the trauma may be different. And it's learning to look at a person for the person inside, hearing the full story, rather than making assumptions from the outset. Mm-hmm. And Brene Brown is one of my favorite leaders in this space of really leaning in, and she talks about hold hands with strangers. When you bring someone into your space and you want to know their actual story, that creates a connection that's so different than this looking from the outside or othering, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to do something that's a little, perhaps not unique, but unique to me, and I am certainly growing in this way of learning to have courageous conversation, learning how to think more consciously of how I interact with others. And I'm a privileged white person, right? So I live in a white body, and I would like to use my privilege to be able to create spaces that move these conversations forward. I'm not going to shy away from them. And if we can do it in wellness conversations, I think that is a huge step in the right direction, I guess I should say.
Yeah, and because I think and I feel like there's this element of comparison too when we're in what I'll just continue to call it like the mainstream mentality of it versus this enlightened sacred space that you're creating. And I don't think it's very conscious. Maybe it's not, for some people it is, but I think overall it's not. It's like we start to even compare our trauma. Like, 100%. Oh, well, you haven't really experienced trauma because it's not this bad. And I think that even like encourages people not to talk about their trauma.
Yep.
And there's so much about trauma that we already don't talk about.
Yes.
Whether it's something that happened within your family dynamic or within even like a church dynamic or whatever it is, or
work dynamics,
so many different things. So I think it's important that we also remind people that no trauma is too small.
Exactly. And that comparative suffering has no helpfulness in your experience, right? So for me, in my experience, these traumas that I've embodied are impactful. Like, they've shaped my world. And if I try to discount them by saying, well, it's not nearly as bad as someone else's experience, that's totally taking me out of the equation. And that's saying I'm not valid for having that experience.
Right. Yeah, it's totally discounting our own value.
Exactly.
Which, again, like has become so culturally ingrained that, it's just crazy to me, like how we've let it go on this long of, whether it's, different genders or different races or, it's because, and that's the other thing that's interesting to me is it's not isolated to one group that we've discounted.
Right.
It's like we discount almost everything and then yet we still want to like hold some things higher than others. It's just a very interesting.
It is. And what you're talking about is intersectionality, right? So looking at how all of these our stations in life, right? Which is, I did air quotes because it's like, well, that's a hard way to call it. I've heard recently it called your social geography, like where you fit into the community. And it's that really diving in and having a true conversation with someone to understand and unpack that person's experience. And if we can listen to really absorb and learn more about this person versus like, oh, I've already set my parameters, who I think this person is, and they have to prove me wrong.
Yeah. So it creates an adversarial dynamic right off the bat.
Exactly. And we're all in a learning process, and if we can give each other grace through this, but also speak up. And this is new for me to have these kind of conversations over the past year. My inclination is when I feel uncomfortable and don't know the language or exactly what to say, it's get quiet and like read a bunch of things. And like as a scientist, it's like, I got to say the right thing. Like, this is how it works. Like, I have to say it. And I've looked at all of the potential things that I could say wrong, and then I've chosen this one. And so I'm challenging myself over this year, and in a space, like, I'm creating a pretty public space where I can make some flub ups. It can be messy. And how can I continue to make mistakes, because that's how we move forward, in a way that are still compassionate for others, and never having the intent to harm, but also recognizing when I do that it's time to speak up again. You know, like that this is a challenge. And so it's very important for me to say that I can never claim that my space is safe, because I don't know anyone else's experience. It is my intention to create a space that is sacred and allows for these conversations, but it's for someone else to tell me if they think that my space is safe or not.
Oh, I like that.
I can't prescribe that for someone.
Yeah. I like that a lot.
Yeah. There's been a lot of learning lessons this year.
Yes. I mean, God, for all of us, I'm sure, but man. So on that note of this year, what is your rainbow that's come out of this past year of COVID, since we're like just past the official big shutdown that happened, which I think is where everyone marks like the beginning, even though it started way before that.
It started way before that. And for me, it's funny that the summit for me is this demarcation point, because last year I had scheduled Tahoe Spark in Tahoe in Kings Beach for April 4th and 5th. And so that was like the middle of the mix when we didn't understand what was going to happen, but everything had shut down, where I converted to this online format. And I thought that I was going to have it in person this year, and looking at how the world was going, that didn't seem like a smart idea. In this silver lining, it's like, okay, well, I learned that process. I learned a way of connecting with people that wasn't physical, which is really hard for me, because I've had a lot of loneliness. I am someone who thrives in community, hence why I create events that like the focus is around community healing and community engagement. I mean, it's been the number of lessons that have come out for me, taking into account my own journey, my own healing, my own like really diving into my shadow, looking at these things, and I've become braver, certainly in this time. I would say that's been my biggest piece of how do I make these changes while honoring myself, and speaking up when that's been something that's been really challenging. Not only, when we're talking about social justice, but in justice for myself, right? What is it that I truly need? I've learned nonviolent communication techniques, which is a new way to speak too. I'm still practicing those ones. I've also got to spend much more time with my husband. This has been our brand new newlywed time. We did get married in September of 2020. Was supposed to be out in this beautiful islands, the San Juan Islands in the Puget Sound, Pacific Northwest area, and we got married in our home. And so it's been navigating, like there's just been a lot of introspection and a lot of progress that I'm proud of this self-analysis and how to be different. So
Resilience.
braver. Yeah, resilience and just bravery. I mean, it's really that's came out of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. What else?
What else? I think if we're still talking about rainbow, the silver lining, or these, like, I've come to realize how important my community is. I remember sitting at Thanksgiving, which was usually a big event for my husband and I, with our one friend who actually was the officiant at our wedding. So, and saying, like, you know, when we get out of this, you know what, this feeling that we have in ourselves is like how important community is for us. Like, I recognize, I'm here in Tahoe for the first time of leaving Seattle in a year because this is my heart home. Mm-hmm. This is where I need to be with people. Yes, I'm resilient. Yes, I'm brave. Yes, I can figure out how to do it online. And, like, this is important.
Well, we're social animals.
Yes.
We are not meant to be isolated. And I know it's only been a year, and medically and scientifically speaking, we as a human race have done amazing things to learn so much so fast and to come up with what are the best solutions that we can. Again, are they perfect? No. Yeah. But so I think that needs to be said and celebrated. But also, like, we are not meant to stay in this dynamic of isolation. And so we have to continue to be creative, to be brave, to have courage and say, okay, what is our new normal? How are we going to interact with this virus on a day-to-day basis?
Yes. And that's, again, like what you started with, the conversation of us being energetic beings, but in human bodies and human forms. And as light workers, energy workers, how can we be creative? And I've seen this year, you know, we've all turned to online experiences, or many of us have turned to ways of connecting with community and online experiences. And last year, I was really skeptical of, like, how could this feel? Like, because I create retreat experiences where people can hug one another. Like, that's important. Like, we're going to cry together. We're going to hug together. We're going to be in this community. And I was really blown away, and wish I didn't say surprised, but I was, at how powerful that doing energy healings worked over distance. I'm a Reiki master teacher. I don't like the word master. But I teach this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I know that energy transcends time and space. Of course it does. But when I heard some of the participants, they were like, I felt the hands on my body, and we were not in physical space. And that was validating, I guess I would just say, to have those kind of experiences.
I think, yes, too, especially coming, like you said, from a scientific background, and I know I've had that same journey of confirmation, of confirming that this energy stuff really does work. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
So, yes, it is very powerful. And I'm excited for both your work and my work and all of our light worker beings and light leaders to help others have that experience of being able to transmute their blockages, their traumas, their, all of the different experiences that they've, and again, I'm talking with my hands too, that they've squirreled away somewhere in their body, whether it, is their back, their reproductive organs, their throat, their head,
lungs.
Heart and lungs. Yes, exactly. Like all the, whatever it is or wherever it is, there are so many more tools than just Western medicine.
Absolutely. Well, and this brings again back to this, like, how we create our own reality. So it's how I think we talked briefly about epigenetics, right? Like that we have the DNA molecules in our body that have been passed down from our biologic families. Like that's how the genes work. But we, as energetic beings in a human body, get to decide which parts are actually being expressed. And this is part that's still so fascinating to me. And a lot of Bruce Lipton's work, the biology of belief, and how truly, people can transcend what's happening physically, because our genes do, our thoughts affect our environment, right? And our environment affects our gene expression. And so if we can create through all of these tools that we're learning, like using the language, using neuro-linguistic programming, because I think people shy away from NLP because it says programming, but in fact we are repatterning and reframing the way that we are using our words to shape our reality.
Well, because let's face it, we've already been programmed.
Oh, 100%.
So,
and that even brings us back to this idea of when we're talking about social justice and the things that have happened in our upbringings. I can speak for myself and this society that we're living in, that things have been implanted into our psyche without our control or our consent in the beginning. And so for me, during this past year, I've been going in and interrogating which ones of these are mine and which one of these are not mine. Okay, and if they are mine, do I want them to stay or do I want them to go?
Absolutely.
And so this is this whole process, and can I then change my reality? Can I change what my gene expression? Can I be brave? It's big for me to say this because I've been a pretty, I wouldn't say meek is the first word that's coming up. That's not true. I'm a big person. I have a big personality, but as I was growing, and in my childhood, I was not invited to speak in a lot of conversation. And so now it's like, okay, well, I'm changing that reality. I have the ability to speak. I have the ability to have complex conversations that may be uncomfortable and may be difficult, but I've created that for myself by what I want my reality to look like. I'm not exactly sure if that means my voice is changing, right, in terms of gene expression, but I can think about my holistic journey, my health journey, that I want to be, like in terms of irony, as a geneticist, I have a genetic mutation. Like that's why I had the clotting disorder, because I do have a clotting disorder. And so, but I haven't been on medication for blood thinners since it was 6 months that I was on them, following my medical trauma. And then it's like, nope, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I'm not. I mean, of course, I made lifestyle changes and choices to speed my healing. But I can transcend that something encoded in my DNA by how I am living day to day.
Well, and it's so empowering. And I feel like this is one of the things I really want to get out there, is that we have the choice. You have the choice. You don't have to do what someone tells you to do just because they have a different degree or a degree, period.
Right. You're giving your agency away, right?
Yes.
You're giving your power away.
Yes. And so I totally can relate to the being encouraged and or allowed to speak in different environments. And I think also too that brings up the whole concept of self-worth and the value that we put on our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, and whether we feel comfortable not expressing that, because they are all valuable. But if we don't think they are, then we're not going to express them. They're just going to stay in our little bodies unless we're doing some other, energetic or physical work. But in general, this is sort of how the stagnicities and blocks perpetuate and then possibly turn into a medical problem.
Absolutely. I mean, I love that we're talking about it as the cycle, right? Like we have the program in our DNA. We have how we would like, how it is expressed, then how we could change that being expressed, and then back to the disease state, right? A dis-ease, right? How, if these limiting beliefs can then reimplant themselves and become a physical manifestation, oftentimes, of dis-ease, this lack of ease. So I think that I was going to say the other silver lining, oh my gosh, I can't even believe I forgot, in COVID is I started a daily meditation practice that I was committed to, that I've meditated for, quite some time. I'm a yoga teacher. I learned meditation through all of this, and I know that I heard over and over the positive effects, and yeah, it happened, but this I started on October 5th of last year. I've meditated every single day, and that has really allowed the space for me to pause. There's also a Viktor Frankl quote, but it's questionable if he's the one to actually attribute it to, but it says that in between the stimulus and response, there is a space. And it's in that space you have the ability to choose your reaction. And so I think by doing this meditation practice, I've allowed myself space to make a conscious choice of what my next action is. And believe you me, like, this is a practice. This is not, I certainly haven't figured it out. No, now I'm just, always going with the highest and best. But it's certainly helped me to root into that and seek my truth and have a better relationship with my my now husband, with my community, by noticing first instead of simply reacting.
Yes, I love that. There's so many benefits with meditation, and again, like you said, especially those of us that are in the energetic and spiritual community, it's almost like the drum, the ever-beating drum. Like, yes, we know meditation is helpful. Yes, we know it's good for us. La, 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 la. But, so do you mind if I ask, was there a specific technique that you have chosen, and did you do that same technique every single day?
That's a great question. I've been experimenting. So I had sort of an accountability because I started a meditation class, and I was like, well, if I'm going to teach this, I have to practice what I'm preaching. So 2 weeks before that class I was like, all right, well, what if I meditate? I know that 21 days is what you hear from a lot of people as the magic number. Exactly. And then, so I just use Insight Timer as an app. That's who tracks it for me. And I was trying to listen to all different kinds because I was trying to teach different ways of like, okay. Can we do a breath work meditation? How do we do that? If we do a loving kindness meditation, if we do a body scan meditation. So it's sort of like playing with these different things. And I've also changed the way that I look at meditation. Like, it used to be a have to, like you were talking about that drum, like, oh yes, I've heard, yes, just meditate. And then, if you don't have time to meditate for 5 minutes, then you should be meditating for an hour, like these, it's like an old adage.
Yeah.
And when I changed my perspective and realized, and I actually have it in my calendar in my phone now, and it says, tap into universal energy source. I have it scheduled at 7 a.m. every morning. And when I got to the state of looking forward to that connection, that changed everything. Instead of it being a chore, it was like, I get to do this right now. I get to do this, and I look forward to it. If I get to the end of the day and somehow I didn't do it in the morning, I'm like, oh, I want to do it because I'm looking forward to it. I'm also, an achiever scientist, so like I want my number to keep going, tick, 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 tick. Maybe gamifying it is a bad thing. I don't know. It works for me.
Whatever works.
But yeah, I use a couple of different techniques, and I find that sometimes I get bored, and so finding the same practice hasn't been as helpful for me. But what I have come back to is mindfulness. And if a meditation doesn't turn out in the day to be a seated or a laying down meditation, eyes closed, with music or whatnot, then if I can stop and take conscious breaths throughout the day, or if I can listen to a song that I love and be present. So I've also like changed my rules of what it's like to meditate, and that's really opened it up for me too.
Yeah, I think walking meditations or nature meditations don't get enough credence either. But you can infuse that restorative breath into either walking through nature or, sitting with your back against a tree with your eyes closed and just breathing with the trees.
Exactly.
So yes.
Or reading or thinking, there's so many. I do prefer guided meditation. I can do it on my own, and there's time. I mean, I question, I was like, did I do it today or did I fall asleep? What was, thinking, but giving myself that credit of, okay, well, this is my practice and this is how it looks today. If I could take 1 minute to breathe, if I could take 3 conscious breaths. I love, I had led a walking meditation, and that was so fun for me. And I was like narrating as I was walking, and I don't do it as often because, the technology connection, but it's fabulous. I've also committed to offering a weekly virtual meditation circle. So if nothing more, I show up and I do this meditation. I know it sounds like you're saying many practitioners are like, oh, meditation is the way, it's the way, it's the way. And then I'm a convert for sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like you, I've been meditating for years, and for the longest time, it was just off and on. It was sporadic. It was almost like whenever I was in crisis.
Yes.
That's what I would come back to. But I would say when I was in pharmacy school is when I really started a regular meditation practice, and that came out of that stress. Yes. Because I was having really insomniac problems, which is not good. No. And it's not good for learning either. So. Sure. And since then, I've, like you, experimented with so many different things. And you brought up the word mindfulness. And I just want to pause there for a minute, because that word really just means awareness. Yes. And I think that word can be so esoteric for some, especially depending on the context it's brought into conversation. And my word for 2021 is awareness. For 2020 it was flow, which is ironic. But it ended up being a good word for me in that year. But again, awareness, mindfulness, so just being, and the word present, what does that mean? So again, it just means that you're here, you're now, you're aware, how are you breathing? Where's there contraction in your body? All, just little things, and just observing without judgment. Yeah. That's all. So simple. Yeah. So easy. And it seems almost so easy, why would I bother with that? Absolutely. But when you make it a practice and you are intentional and deliberate, then that's when the shifts really start to happen.
Exactly. I mean, you were talking about almost like reactive meditation, right? Like we do this because it's so stressful, then I know I have to do this. But almost like proactive meditation, like I'm doing this because I know that this will create space that I never in my humanness would have come up with that particular solution or possibility, right? And so when you give it up, and this is, I do a lot of that meditation of trying to move into oneness. Okay, well, if this is the space of infinite possibilities, what are the ones that are going to arrive to me that I'm going to be aware of today? And from a scientific perspective, I think it's, if we want to ascribe something like, well, why does mindfulness work, right? You've gone into a parasympathetic state in your body where then you can start to notice these things that may have always been there, and you're of a clear state that you can then choose a different path or opportunity.
You've given yourself the opportunity to refocus.
Exactly.
And, and it's, again, I say this a lot too, it's not how perfect we are, but it's how quickly we come back. And so, just being gentle with yourself and forgiving and allowing for whatever to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
And how fun and exciting and optimistic is that?
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you were talking earlier about creating community, and especially in the dynamic of COVID and all the isolation. So do you have some suggestions maybe for anyone out there that might be feeling like really isolated and disconnected, and how they might go about, maybe they had a community before COVID, but that's fallen apart or dissolved. How would they maybe go about creating a new community or finding a new one?
I mean, I'm laughing because I was like, well, you could just come to Spark Healing Summit. There'll be a beautiful community together. And for me, I moved from Lake Tahoe, which was a really open, friendly space, that within the first week of living here, I had a friend group solidly. And then I moved to Seattle, and it wasn't like that at all. They call it the Seattle Freeze for a reason, and it takes multiple years to be able to sort of like break into that community. For me, I found community by seeking out individuals who had similar interests, and that was in the entrepreneurial space. And it first actually started online. It started in like social media groups and things like that, and that have grown in a relationship in that way. There are resources out there. I mean, if you're really feeling alone, like Insight Timer has a really neat feature that when you meditate, you can be alerted how many other people are meditating with you.
Oh, cool.
And so that felt connecting. Another thing that I learned when I was having a really hard time as a light being, right, and didn't understand. I was like, do other people feel this? Like, what's going on? I envisioned as I was going to sleep, like the night sky and the stars, and recognizing my connection with all of the individual light beings. If I saw them as little points of light and saw that we are together as a collective. But this is all pretty esoteric, right? Like this isn't like a tangible way of connecting with other individuals. I'm not very good at sales, but like Spark Healing Summit for sure. Like that's the kind of community I want to create. And come to virtual meditations and find there are ways to do it for free if that's a challenge. Seek out individuals who are community organizers and see what sort of offerings they are creating. I mean, for me, I had to start getting out of my comfort zone, reaching out and calling people that I hadn't called before. Because I was embarrassed that I felt really lonely. I'm like, I'm fine. I don't have kids that I'm doing Zoom school with. Like, I have a beautiful home that I live in. So those are some tangible ways, I would think.
Yeah.
Were there others that you had in mind?
No, I just wanted to hear your perspective, since you are, I would consider, like a community builder.
Yeah.
And so the only thing I would say is that I liked your suggestion of finding like-minded people with activities.
Yeah.
And or gatherings. Well, and so I think like we keep coming back to the gatherings because that's our default, because again, we're social.
Yeah.
I hope that most places across the country will be offering, even if they're limited numbers, some sort of in-person gatherings soon if they're not already. But I do think maybe like focusing on the fun. Like what, whoever you are out there, what do you like to do for fun?
Yeah.
And even if you have to like make a list,
Yeah.
be like, what did I used to like to do for fun before all this happens?
Yeah.
And then like from there, get online and start Googling.
Yeah.
Where can I do this with other people? Where can I meet other people? Are there places that are having group gatherings?
Yeah. And for me this year, I got back to snowboarding, and it was like something I did on the daily when I lived here. And then I was like, oh, I forgot how much I love this. And even though it was often solo activity, I was sort of like peripherally in a group, like, oh, we are snow people, right? Here we are getting ready for the lift and social distancing and all of this. But it felt like a community experience. And even like going out and enjoying time in the park, if you're in a community, you can like feel that connection, tuning into your heart and this heart connections with others to try to feel that connection and community. It's a hard one. There's not one answer, and I am a particularly interested in community person. Like, that's how I feel connection and love is in groups. And so it was trying, and then it's like, well, you know what? I'm gonna reimagine this. Okay, we're gonna find different ways. I'm gonna speak to people from my heart, and putting on an event like this, reaching out to facilitators who I frankly thought were well outside of my realm of influence to be able to chat with, who've become very good friends because we started with a very vulnerable, real conversation about who we each are, what we want to bring to this world, and fast friendships, like with people across the globe, not in the United States. And
I think also breaking down those barriers to feeling vulnerable. And you brought up Brene Brown, and she is like the queen of that work. But I think just really like that's almost like a home base to come back to too. Is like that is talk about like evergreen work that we will continually need to work on, because I feel like no matter how much self-work and progress we've made, I feel like we also still come back to that, oh, well, we discount ourselves, we judge ourselves, we say like, my pain's not as valuable as someone else's or as important or whatever. So I just encourage any of you out there feeling isolated, feeling alone, you're not.
Yeah, definitely not.
But you also have to have the courage and the vulnerability to reach out.
It's tough in the day and age of social media. Like, I feel like we see everybody's best days often. And it's rare that we get to see the behind the scenes of the work and the day-to-day difficulties and whatnot. I'm trying to break that down. And it's hard and it's scary. But the success and the positivity, like the amount of connection that I've gotten because I've done that has been my validating factor to continue to do that. And I mean, if you know me, you'll probably hear a Brene Brown quote every day. There's a couple of things, like, if you feel alone, like, read any of her books. Like, she speaks in such a way, in particular, Daring Greatly is the one that I connected with first. Or The Gifts of Imperfection. It's like coming to like understand, oh, people really are like this. They just don't talk about it, right? And feeling, and that may give you a way and language even to speak and be a little bit more vulnerable, to open up your heart and be there. And she also says her mantra is, "I'm not here to be right. I'm here to get it right."
Yes.
I was just like,
amen to that. Right? All right. So on that note, because I know we have to go.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to continue this later, and have another fun-filled episode. So where can people find you online?
Absolutely. So I am Apothecary of Light, which is very difficult to spell. So you can say A Pop of Light is how you can find me, apopoflight.com or kckent.com. My summit is sparkhealingsummit.com. It's May 20th through 23rd, happening from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific. So some really big, fun-filled days that will be recorded, so you don't have to be there for all of it. I am on social media at Apothecary of Light, Instagram and Facebook. And if you ever just want to send me an email and say, hey, I would love to be part of community, please feel free to do that too.
Yeah. Join you in meditation online.
Online on Thursdays at noon, my virtual meditation circle. You can find that through Eventbrite, and you just have to register and it's free.
Cool. Anything else that you feel like we need to know from you?
Oh my gosh. Just know that I'm there with you too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we will have Casey back soon for another episode. And you guys have a fabulous week.
Thank you.